How do you find good writing advice? And then once you find it, what do you do with it? That's what the topic of this video is going to be today. So join me.
You have a story to tell, but you don't know where to start. Let me show you how to free your story. I teach you how to write and how to dig deep in your soul to release your story and make a difference in the world.
Welcome to the Julia Amante channel. If we're just meeting, I am Julia Amante, a women's fiction author, and also give you writing tips on Friday. Okay, so let's talk about, today I want to talk to beginning writers. So if you're just starting out, then I'm sure that you've noticed that there's a lot of writing advice out there, right? That's the good thing, is that there is tons of writing advice out there. I didn't really have that when I was starting out. If I wanted advice on writing, I had two options. One was to buy writing magazines, which I did. So I subscribed to magazines and I would get, there were 2 or 3 of them that I would get, and I would read great articles on writing. And then there were books that I would buy, and I have some of them still here today, most of them probably, and they were, again, full of writing advice for writers. Today, you are really lucky because you have so much out there. There are blogs, there are videos, there are all kinds of people that are wonderful enough to give you their advice. That's the good news, right? The not so good news is that how do you know, with all this information, all the stuff that's out there, what's good, what's helpful, and how do you choose, or, how do you either get not overloaded with the same information over and over again, or how do you kind of decipher what's useful to you? So we're going to talk about a few ways that you can do that you can figure out, okay, what is it that is good and what should I be listening to? I'd like to begin by saying that the first piece of advice that I'm going to give you, and probably everybody should give you, is that in order to be a good writer, you absolutely have to write. It sounds obvious, and it is obvious. You really need to write if you want to improve your writing, because only by writing, it doesn't matter all the advice that people give you. I can give you, and I have, advice on how to plot. I can give you advice on how to create great characters. I can give you advice on how to write dialogue, right? It doesn't matter. There's a lot of advice out there, but if you are not taking that advice, so if all you're doing is listening to it and you're not actually writing, you're not going to improve. It's all going to be theoretical. It's all going to be interesting, but you're not going to get better if you're not actually writing. So write a lot. Try different things. Try on different voices. Try writing in the active voice. Try writing in passive voice. Try writing dialogue. Try telling. Try showing. Try all of these things, because only by doing that is the advice even going to make any sense. So when you are doing something, let's say you're writing dialogue, and then you read an article about dialogue, it's actually going to make more sense to you, because you will say, oh, okay, that's why I was having problems with this. That's why this character sounded like, like he wasn't really speaking, like he was just reading something, because I didn't do this. Or, maybe I have my dialogue tags wrong. Maybe I'm including too many dialogue tags. So the advice that you're getting from what you're reading or with the videos that you're watching is going to make more sense to you if you can apply it to your own writing. So write a lot. That's I'm sure the advice that most writers give you. It's the first piece of advice. Do a lot of writing, as much as you can, because the more writing you do, the better your writing is going to be, and the more you're going to be able to make use of the advice that you're getting. Okay, my second piece of advice is who do you listen to, right? There's a lot of information, like we said. Listen to the experts, okay? When I want to learn something new, I find out who the experts are, and that's who I listen to. So yes, anybody could write advice. Anybody can give you advice about writing. You can go on to writing groups. We'll talk about them in a second. And you can get all kinds of advice. Some of it may be good, some of it may not be good. So who are the experts that you should be listening to? Okay, first, authors, right? Authors are doing what you want to do. So if they are taking the time to write articles, if they're taking the time to write books, if they're taking the time to create videos, they're sharing what their experiences. one thing though is that is their experience. What works for one author may not necessarily work for another author. What works for an author who's been writing for 30 years may not work for you. Why? Because they have been writing. So if you're looking at a best-selling author, for example, and the best-selling author says, well, I write, 10 hours a day, and then I submit it to my agent, and then my agent gives me feedback, and then I do, okay, well, that's fantastic if you're that person. Okay, because if you can't write 10 hours a day, 8 hours a day, then that might not be helpful to you. If you don't have an agent who's going to be there to read work, if you don't have an established readership who is already going to buy everything that you have written, right? It's different for somebody who's been writing a long time. So listen to all authors. Listen to some authors that have been writing for a long time. Listen to some authors that have just started, because they have the recent experience. This is what they've gone through. This is how they've sold their novel. This is the topics that are selling, or the genres that are selling. So for Stephen King can sell whatever he writes, but you can't, because you might be writing the same thing, but you don't have that readership, right? So you need to write something fresh, something new. So what's selling? A new author may know that. So listen to different authors at different stages in their career. It's not just the best-selling authors that are selling millions of copies, because you may not be in that place, and that advice may or may not be helpful. Okay, so first, experts, definitely authors, because they're doing what you want to do. Second, agents and editors. So agents and editors are fantastic. A lot of them will give you advice. They go to writers' conferences, they write articles, they write blogs, they share things sometimes on social media, and they may make videos as well, right? So there are, if they're, again, kind enough to do this, they're doing it because they want to help writers. They are telling you what it is that they like, how to approach them, what turns them on, what turns them off. So it's a good idea to listen to editors and agents, especially if you would like to sell your story to a traditional publisher, going through, right, agents and editors. If that's what your goal is, then look for these editors, these agents who are creating content for you, so that you understand what it is that they want. Okay, so that's your second type of expert. Your third type of expert are teachers, people that are creating courses, teachers that may or may not be in selling, publishing. So what can you learn from them? You're thinking, well, if they're not really selling books, if they're not really writing their own books, most teachers are, but if they're not, then what can I learn from them? Well, you can still learn about writing. You can still learn about the skills of writing. You can learn about creating good dialogue. You can learn about writing in general, just what is good writing, what is, how to create a good theme for your story, how to build suspense. There's a lot that writing teachers can share, and they don't have to be like college educated teachers, but they can just be writing teachers, people who, and a lot of times they are college educated, and they teach creative writing courses, but it's all useful. And again, they are experts that can help you to write better, and a lot of them are teachers at universities, and also they're writers. So you get, two experts in one, right? So those are your experts that you can look for specifically for their articles, their blogs, their videos, their books. Okay, the next tip that I'm going to give you is to become an active learner. What do I mean by that? Okay, so I do teach college classes in writing, and I actually teach business writing, and I have taught creative writing as well, but right now I'm teaching business writing. And so what I've learned is that if you are an active learner, you're going to absorb a lot more of what you're getting out there, and you don't have to keep rereading and exposing yourself to the same information that basically wastes your time, right? And I learned that from myself too, because I'm guilty of this. I will listen to, a podcast on something. I don't know, what, anything, losing weight, or being successful, or being a good planner, whatever I'm interested in that day, right? I'm interested in a lot of things, so it could be anything. But I will listen to a podcast on that, and then I'll listen to another one, and then I'll listen to another one, and then I'll listen to another one, and then I'll take a course on it, and then I will read a book about it, and then I have all this information about that topic. And I haven't stopped and said, wait a minute, okay, let me absorb it. Let me read this book and actually maybe take some notes and think about it. And maybe take some action on what they're telling me to do, rather than just absorbing information. And I think we do this as writers a lot. We will listen to a lot of videos on writing. How do you do this? How do you do that? And it's good to get a lot of information, and it's good to hear it again and again. But there has to be a point where you're like, okay, I think I understand I think I understand characterization now, right? I think I understand dialogue, and I'm going to try it, and I'm going to do it. Because if all you're doing is just getting more and more information, but you're never taking any action, you're never really absorbing what they're saying, it's not helping you. So there's 4 things you can do to become an active learner, okay? The first thing is to read and listen to the information, right? So you really just take the time to really read and really listen to it. The second thing is take notes. So as you are listening or as you're reading something, have a notepad next to you where you can take some notes. Okay, this was important. Okay, this is what this person is saying. Take some notes, highlight, because when you're doing that, it's actually getting into your brain, rather than just something that you're hearing that's passing through. The third thing is to just think about what it is that you just read. What did this person say? Why did they say that? Question that a little bit. Why are they giving me this advice? Or why did they use that particular story? What am I getting out of this? So think about what the person said. And the last thing is to actually do something with the information. If you've read this article on writing good dialogue, and you've taken some notes and you've highlighted something, then when you go back to write some dialogue, try to use the information that you were given. Try to say, okay, well, let me see. I'm going to not use, or I'm going to use unique dialogue tags, or I'm not going to use any dialogue tags, or I'm going whatever, right? I'm going to do what this person says and see how it looks in my novel. See if I like the way that my story reads after I do this. So that way you're like, okay, well, I understand this. It either worked for me or it didn't work for me. If it didn't work for me, I'm not going to bother reading that anymore, because I already tried it, right? It didn't work. Or if it worked great, then I'm going to start implementing now. I don't really need to continue reading about this, because I understand it and I'm using it. Not that you're never going to read anything again about writing, or you're not going to go back. I'm constantly reading stuff, and it's good to do that, because you always learn something new. But you also don't want to just overload yourself on just information and then not take any action. So take some action on what you're reading, absorb what you're reading. Don't just go through 10 articles. Better to read 1 or 2 articles and really understand them than just to have a bunch of stuff. Okay, the other piece of advice that I'm sure a lot of writers have given you, if you've read a lot about writing and becoming a good writer, is read a lot, especially if you're a beginning writer. Now, these are not like how-to. Read actual novels that you want to write. If you want to write a romance, read romance novels. Read a lot of them. I read all the time. I'm always finding something that I like, either a phrase that somebody uses and I like, or just a way of describing something, or just all kinds of things that I take from a story. It's like, oh, wow, okay, I really like the way that person developed the character. I like how the way they introduced a character. And it gives me, it gives me more for when I write. It's like, oh yeah, I remember how she did that. I want to do that too. So I want to introduce my character in this interesting way. So it helps you to read other people, gives you ideas, it keeps you active on what the genre is, what's selling in the genre, and what readers are interested in. So definitely keep reading within your own genre. Okay, and then lastly is to make sure that you are always improving your writing skills. So and it's not just grammar, right? But it can be, but just make sure that you're always improving. So if you are doing the other steps, right? If you're reading an article on plotting and then you implement that, right? Think about it, do all that and implement that, then you, by doing that, you're improving your writing. But always look for ways that you can make your writing better. It can be grammatical, so if you have issues with grammar, it's not the most exciting read, but you might want to read. It's like, oh, today I'm going to read about, you know, I don't know, some grammatical thing. So I have books on my shelves on grammar. I don't pick them up and just read them. But sometimes I have a question, right? Like, should I do it this way? And I will pick it up and go, oh yeah, okay, this is that. I remember that now, right? I'm supposed to do it this way. And it helps. It helps me to keep, my writing fresh, and it keeps it accurate. And then when I pass it on to an editor, some of that they don't have to find. They still find stuff all the time, but it helps me to make my story as good as I can. So always continue to improve your writing skills. So ultimately, how do you know if writing advice is going to be good or helpful? And the answer is that if it helps you to move your project forward, if it's something that you need, then it's going to be helpful for you. Okay, so not everything that is out there is going to be helpful. And something to remember too is that we need to be receptive, and at different times we're at different stages of our writing career at different times, right? So something that you read maybe early on in your writing career might be helpful because you're a new writer and it's interesting. When you're older, it might be like, okay, I've heard that a million times, it's just repetitive, I don't really need that, right? Or it could be the other way around. When you're just starting out, something may be like, well, why, this makes no sense, this is dumb writing advice. And then you could read it 5 years later and say, oh yeah, this is really great writing advice. Why? You weren't really ready to hear it as a beginning writer. And then years later, once you've had the experience, like, okay, I understand what this author is talking about now, right? Now it makes sense. It wasn't dumb advice. It was just I wasn't ready for it. So remember that sometimes advice, again, could be helpful or not helpful depending on where you are in the stage that you're at, right, as a writer. The best way to judge whether it's helpful or not helpful is if it's really helping you, if it's moving you closer to your writing goal, if it's helping your writing project, then it's going to be useful and helpful. Okay, so let's talk about, I said I was going to talk about writing groups. Let's talk about bad writing advice before I end this video. And I don't really want to call it bad advice because it's not bad. Everybody who gives you advice is trying to be helpful. So I belong to, on social media, various writing groups, and there's a lot of great advice. There's a lot of people that give you their opinions, but that's what we want to remember, right? It's somebody's opinion. Unless we know who they are, we don't know who they are, right? They're just other writers that saying, hey, this worked for me, this is how I do it. But so just be careful with that. Again, so it can be good writing advice, or it can be just somebody's opinion that there's no reason why it worked for them. Maybe they were lucky, maybe it worked, maybe it didn't work for them. So just when you are on, your social media networks and you're getting advice, just kind of, verify that. Maybe read something from an expert to verify that it's true. That's, this is what publishers are looking for. This is the way you should do it. I hear all kinds of stuff. Some of the stuff I hear is good advice, and some of the other stuff I hear, I think, where did you get this from? I don't think this is true. Okay, so just kind of be careful with group social media information. Look for information, again, from experts, from people who are in the industry, who know what they're talking about, who really want you to succeed, right? If an editor and agent is writing something, for example, they want you to succeed. They want you to deliver a manuscript to them that is readable, that is interesting, that they can actually sell to publishers. So they have a reason for giving you that advice, because they want your story to be better. Okay, so I hope this helps, and if it does, then please hit the like button, hit the share button, and come back next Friday. Hit the subscribe button so that it will remind you to come back next Friday when I will post a new video. Have a great week, and I will see you again next Friday.